Good morning.
Good afternoon, I guess, or good morning.
Not yet.
Late morning. Assemblywoman Titus, Assemblyman Bronson, members of the Commission. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Jim Cahill. I'm president of New York State Building and Construction Trades Council, a statewide labor organization which represents 200,000 unionized construction workers in New York State. Apprenticeship training is at the heart of our very existence. The building trades unions and their signatory contractors have created and funded a skilled craft apprenticeship system that is the envy of the world. No other industry in North America has a compatible system in place. We also utilize several pre-apprentice programs, most of them operated by the local building trades. The information I share with you today is based on our experience and success, and I hope it will be helpful in your creation and evaluation of job readiness programs for other industries. You requested that I speak about how to replicate successful pre-apprentice programs and how to improve the needs for them. With respect to expanding the number of pre-apprenticeship programs, the first question you need to ask yourself is whether a particular pre-apprentice program is necessary. The answer should be industry-specific and based on employment forecasts. But I raise the issue because there has been a lot of attention lately on programs that would incentivize apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship training in the construction industry. And it has caused me some concern because the focus has been on more programs and training more people, but without much thought given to what happens to these pre-apprentices once they complete the program. Pre-apprenticeship sounds great when you say you're going to create opportunities for disadvantaged individuals, but what if those opportunities don't really exist? What if there aren't enough jobs to employ everyone who goes through the system? Our programs have been successful because they have been implemented thoughtfully and cautiously. Enrollment is limited based on the number of apprenticeship slots available for apprentices to move into. The bottom line is that it doesn't matter how many individuals receive pre-apprenticeship training if we cannot place them in apprenticeship programs. Trained pre-apprentices aren't employable on construction sites. They are merely prepared for the next step, which is the actual apprenticeship training. The takeaway here is that you can't focus only on pre-apprenticeship training. You must also focus on apprenticeship training as well. And this leads to the second question, which is, how do you define a successful pre-apprenticeship program? I'm sure you will hear testimony today about recruitment, program duration, curricula, and so forth. But in my opinion, the single most important factor that you should be concerned with is whether the program creates a pathway to long-term, middle-class employment opportunities. That pathway will look different for different industries. But in the construction industry, the best pathway is through a joint apprenticeship program. I mentioned earlier that the building trades have operated several apprenticeship programs across the state: Buffalo, Rochester, Long Island, New York City. These programs are administered by the Regional Trades Council within the area. The State Building Trades is also developing a statewide program which will incorporate best practices from the existing models with the goal of standardizing the programs while still recognizing the need for individual autonomy and flexibility. The statewide program will primarily be modeled after the Edward J. Malloy Initiative Construction Skills in New York City. That program has been cited as the most successful pre-apprenticeship program in the country. Since 2001, they have placed 1,714 individuals into joint apprenticeship programs. They have an 80% retention rate, and 89% of the people coming through their program have been minorities. Of all the building trades apprenticeship programs, the common denominator that has made them successful is that they all offer direct entry into joint apprenticeship programs. This link to a joint apprenticeship program is critical in the construction industry because it is the best way to ensure long-term successful outcome. Here's what makes the joint program successful. Retention rate. Apprentices in joint programs are almost twice as likely to achieve journey worker status when compared to single employer programs, 58% versus 30%. Most of our programs in New York have a retention rate between 70 and 90%, meaning that there is a high likelihood those individuals will achieve journeyman worker status. Generally, we've seen the retention rates are higher in programs that are associated with pre-apprenticeship programs. Investment. Joint apprenticeship programs are funded by the unions and their signatory contractors. Nationally, that's the National Building Trades, we invest $1.3 billion a year into more than 1,600 training centers throughout the United States. To give you a clearer picture of what those numbers mean, if the building trades training system was a college or a university, it would be the largest one in the United States, over 5 times larger than the Arizona State University enrollment. Here in New York, we're estimating training around 10,000 apprenticeships through our joint programs, and we invest around $50 billion a year providing training. Single employer programs cannot shoulder that financial responsibility. Safety. Apprentices in a joint apprenticeship program have a better chance of surviving extremely dangerous industry because they receive the proper safety training. According to OSHA statistics, 75% of the workers killed on New York City construction projects in 2014 were non-union, meaning they probably haven't had the same level of safety training that would have received in a joint program. Diversity. Nationally, research has shown that the number of women and minorities who participate in joint programs is significantly higher than those in single employer programs. In New York, we estimate about 30% of our apprentices are minorities and 7% are women. In 2000 study on New York City construction workers showed that blacks comprise 21.3% of the unionized workforce and only 13.8% of the non-union workforce. These numbers will get better as more apprentices come through the system. These statistics are further evidence that joint apprenticeship programs, which are linked to the unions, offer minorities more opportunities than non-joint programs. I understand that the joint apprenticeship model may be specific to construction industry, but the concepts can be universally applied. For example, no matter what kind of pre-apprentice program you're evaluating, you want to make sure that it leads into a registered apprenticeship program and that the apprenticeship program has the financial resources to provide quality training. You want to make sure the program is designed to retain individuals so that they reach journeyman worker level. A program that includes multiple employers is ideal because it helps ensure enough job opportunities to keep apprentices employed, and it is helpful in training apprentices across multiple aspects of our industry. It is important to recognize that the success of a pre-apprenticeship program in the construction industry depends on the availability of apprentice slots in the joint program. The only way to increase the number of apprenticeship slots in these programs is to implement policies which promote the use of the programs. This can be accomplished in several ways. For example, Michigan and California have success by trying their apprenticeship and local hiring policies to their infrastructure investments. Another option is to define public work to capture all projects funded or subsidized by state resources. Right now, state money is used all across New York State to leverage private investment in those projects that have no prevailing wage requirement, which makes it easier for out-of-state and low-wage contractors to compete for this work when though they make no investment in the apprenticeship training. Take, for example, regional economic councils. Money awarded through the REDCs is supposed to transform regional economies. And one of the factors considered in making award is the number of permanent jobs created by the project. Meanwhile, the needs for temporary construction workforce are often ignored. There's no prevailing wage requirement on these projects, which means that wages are factored into the bids, which drives them lower and lower. That's not good for local economies. We know these kinds of initiatives work because we've seen them implemented in New York City. One of the reasons New York City's construction skills program is so successful is because of the partnership between the building trades unions and the city. For example, the city and the building trades entered into a series of PLAs covering billions of dollars in construction projects, which help ensure the work would be available to the apprentices enrolled in the joint apprenticeship programs. In 2007, the city also issued a directive that all individual contracts over $3 million require participation with the New York State Registered Apprenticeship Programs. I want to leave you with the following thoughts. Regardless of the industry, a successful pre-apprenticeship program has to be focused on long-term results, not short-term numbers. The last thing you want is a bunch of programs that offer no real opportunities or that lead to short-term, low-wage, unsafe, dead-end jobs. Pre-apprenticeship programs should provide a path to meaningful middle-class job opportunities, jobs with good wages and benefits in the construction industry. This path leads to joint apprenticeship programs. Successful programs can be replicated, but don't lose sight of the fact that the program should be industry-specific. Even within the same industry, programs should be customized. Successful pre-apprenticeship programs will address artificial barriers such as lack of transportation or childcare, which are major obstacles for minorities and women seeking middle-class jobs. Programs should be developed using the guidance and expertise of those familiar with the industry. They're familiar with their field and able to identify potential problems and pitfalls which could arise. One last thing I want to mention is that a pre-apprenticeship program should ensure that individuals they enroll are qualified to work. For example, if drug testing is required on a job, then individuals should be able to pass a drug test prior to being accepted into the program. It's also important to make sure individuals provide the necessary citizenship or related documentation demonstrating to their employment eligibility. Pre-apprenticeship provides a tremendous opportunity to move people of poverty. This is why it is important to make sure each program is implemented thoughtfully and includes a comprehensive approach that takes into account the needs of the individuals as well as the needs of the employers. Otherwise, this opportunity is wasted. I thank you for allowing me to speak today, and I hope I have provided some insight that will guide and deliberate the state's workforce development policies. We stand ready to work with you in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill. Just for the record, I just want to note that we have been joined by Mike Dendecker, Chair of Veterans Committee, and Assemblywoman Crystal Peoples-Stokes, Chair of Government Operations. Assemblyman Bronson.
Thank you, President Cahill, for your testimony and for pointing out some things that I think are very important, and that is that the overall mission here is to make sure that we're moving people into an opportunity to seize upon a job that is good pay, has benefits, and allows them to provide for their families. And that's really what the purpose of this public hearing is all about. But thank you for reminding us of that. Also, we're cognizant of the concept in upstate, we really have this problem, and that is we don't have enough projects when folks are going through the apprenticeship program so that we keep them interested so that they can stay on projects and on job sites and continue to work. And oftentimes that's a barrier in and of itself. And that's why many of us who are up here are looking at ways, as you well know, to see if we can have more public works projects so that we can have that match. That being said, could you share with us a little bit more, if you can, from your perspective of some of the barriers that you have seen when you and the trades have launched pre-apprenticeship programs, and as the Deputy Commissioner talked about with the memorandum of understanding or the agreement between the apprenticeship program and the pre-apprenticeship program, and how have we been successful in making apprenticeship more accessible to those who might not otherwise have that? And in upstate New York, we have this problem. Downstate, you have more projects, it's less of a burden. But Could you, I'm really looking at the interplay between the pre-apprenticeship that you have
Yep.
and the apprenticeships.
I tell you, as a former apprentice going through the trades, one of the most frightening things that you do is you walk on a job and you don't know anything. You know, the pre-apprentice gives them an opportunity to get, I think it's roughly about 170 hours of course training, which gives you the basic safety issues and different things. It gives you an idea that, you know, it's not so frightening to walk on that job, you know. One of the things that we do, is, it was mentioned earlier, some of the soft skills are lacking. And we do, and when you get into the pre-apprenticeship, when you get into the apprenticeship program, all the trades do have some math related to them and some different types of things. I think if we could do one thing as a group is expand the reading, the math for the pre-apprenticeship programs, that they're not so frightened of that when they get there.
And in your situations, does the apprenticeship program have significant input on what is going to be covered in the pre-apprenticeship programs, as far as both soft skills and some of those more general skills like math and use of school tools and things of that nature? Well,
the pre-apprenticeship is more so safety orientated than anything else, and a comfort level for them to get into. The apprenticeship program itself, they do the hands-on. If a pre-apprentice say he likes to be, in my industry, oh, I'd like to be an electrician, or one would like to be a plumber, or an iron worker, when them slots open up, they've been to a little bit, you start seeing halfway through which way they're leaning. As you, I think you, Senator Dendecker, you talked about being downtown when there's 4,000 people stand online that wait to get into the apprenticeship program. I bet you 80% of them never touched a tool in their life. Mm-hmm. And some of them spent a lot of money on college education and never going nowhere. So that's what's kind of happening. If you get a young person and that's 18 years old, in high school, can't afford college, starts the pre-apprenticeship program, he's focused on where he wants to go. He wants to get into the trades. But the key thing I tried to drive home to you, we need jobs. If you can't provide the jobs for them, you can give them all the training you want. Mm-hmm. But that's the hard part. That's what we have to do together.
We're working on that. We'll get there. Thank you.
I hope so.
Assemblyman Dendecker.
Thank you, Mr. Cahill. I appreciate you taking the time to come up here and testify on behalf of such an important program. I'm a huge advocate for apprenticeship programs. I have seen the rewards of it firsthand within my own family. But again, I'll just go back to where I was talking to the Department of Labor about. What I'm concerned is that we're going to create so many pre-apprenticeship programs that there won't be enough apprenticeship spots alone, much less the actual work after the program. So it's kind of like putting the horse before the cart. So I would think before we worry about pre-apprenticeship programs, and it is important we have some already, I would much rather see us create a larger pool of employment opportunities so that we could then expand and bring more people into the trades altogether. So that's why that seems to be my concern, at least. I don't know how you feel.
I totally agree with you. As I mentioned, if you create all the programs and put a lot of people out with no place to go, it doesn't good. If you deal with the people that are in the industry, we kind of forecast what's going to come down. We know we have 2 years, 3 years worth of work out there between our when it's jointly administered by labor and management. You know what kind of work is scheduled to come out there. You're not just going to put, say, 100 kids out there in a pre-apprenticeship program if you know that there's only going to be spots for maybe 35. Because what you'll do to that, the other 65 that didn't get the opportunity will throw up their hands and disappointed in life again and go someplace else. So that's very important. You do have to regulate it. You have to regulate and absorb the numbers. We can work with that.
Well, what percentage of the overall construction industry now would you say that the apprenticeship programs are actually affecting? Is there room for growth?
If you go by a rule of thumb, it doesn't necessarily. You always try to do one apprentice for every 4 journeymen on a job. That's kind of the rule of thumb that's unwritten out there. I'd say right now in the program, we probably have in New York State 10,000 apprentices, give or take a few.
Well, but now let me just shift that from my last question. The construction industry itself, how much of that industry, of the 100% of all the construction going on, what percentage of the industry actually is working with the trades and getting the apprenticeships there? So would you,
Pre-apprentice or apprentice?
or basically in the entire construction industry, private, commercial, residential, all of it, how much of it is actually being used right now, we'll say, for apprenticeships? What is it, 1%? Is it 2%?
No,
Is there
I can
room
only
for
tell you,
growth?
I can only tell you what the unionized industry does.
How much of the unionized industry is in total construction
Yeah,
industry?
You're probably looking at, on average, 15 to 20% of the actual workforce. You do have members that are retired who work part-time and stuff like that. But the full-time construction worker and the full-time apprentice, I would say, is pretty close to either side of 20%.
So we have 80% of the industry that is not looking at unionized workers and the workforce? So 80% of the industry is non-union right now in construction?
No, I would say you probably have 60% throughout the state is non-union construction.
So if we could get more of that construction projects
You'd
to...
have more apprentices,
Yeah,
and you'd have
okay.
more pre-apprentices.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cahill.
Thank you.
Assemblywoman Peoples-Stowe?
Thank you very much, Mr. Cahill. I appreciated hearing your comments. I actually have the pleasure of knowing one of your colleagues, Mr. Paul Brown, who represents the Western New York area, and I think does a decent job at that. As a matter of fact, of recent, we collaborated to work on a pre-apprenticeship training initiative that 20 folks just received their certification in on Saturday. And, you know, I think that in terms of the number that started and the number that completed, it's a pretty good number because normally a lot of people start and they don't compete. And I was wondering if there's any way or any thought process about creating pre-apprenticeship trainings that happen for the underemployed, meaning the hours would be later in the day and on Saturday so that folks who are underemployed in, say, a retail that would really be interested in becoming a member of the trades, but they can't stop their job in order to go for some sort of apprenticeship training where they're not going to get paid at in order to get prepared for it. So has there been any thought to that?
You know, that's a pretty interesting question because we have some apprenticeship programs, active apprenticeship programs, that actually do it online and stuff like that. So if you have to be adaptable to a pre-apprenticeship program and can supervise it, again, the logistics, when you're in New York City, you jump on a train, you jump on a bus, you can usually get to where you got to go. But if you're in Rochester, sometimes you got to drive a car. If you don't have a car, how are you going to get there? So one of the things that...
And sometimes you don't have any of those problems.
Yeah, we would be flexible. I think that's a great question, and it's a very pertinent point.
Okay.
You have to be flexible.
The other,
And just, there's women with daycare issues, too, that we always look at, too.
okay. Well, we know that sometimes those are problems for folks, and sometimes they're not problems for folks, but they keep being brought up.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, and sometimes exclude people because of it. So let me just ask you about the whole idea of drug testing, which I think, you know, I wouldn't want anybody working for me that was on drugs. But sometimes people who have been recreational marijuana smokers, they still do need to go get a job. Is there a thought that perhaps at the beginning of a program, people who are really want to be in the trades and understand that this is something that they have to give up, that the drug testing can happen after they complete pre-apprenticeship training?
Well, here's what we do on the apprenticeship program. You're notified that usually on if you're talking about the spot checks and stuff, when you come in, you take your drug test before you come in. If you know you're coming down, you have ample opportunity to skip your recreational stuff the week before or whatever. You know that time. And
Unless you're
every
tested by,
apprentice
unless you
before-
take a hair test. If you take a hair test, you're gonna need a little bit longer than that, like a lot longer than that. So I guess my question is, you know, if we're willing to be, as a society, flexible on some of these things so that, at the end of the day, end of the training portion of it, there would have been enough time for this person's system to be clean and drug-free. Not that I'm advocating that people usually take drugs, because quite frankly, you know, most of the people who smoke marijuana in this country are probably not looking for a construction trades job. I mean, they're probably already working somewhere. But the fact of the matter is that there are some people who are not working, and I believe would desire an opportunity, particularly for the kind of pay that you can earn in the trades, you know, to turn their life around. And so I'm just wondering if that's something that we would give consideration to. And I can completely understand if we're not willing to, but I think it is something that we need to begin looking at. The last question I have for you is, actually, it's not the last question, but one other question. Mr. Dendecker asked you about the percentage of construction trade jobs that are organized labor, and you said it was about 40%? Or did you say it was more?
What was that again?
The question that Mr. Dendecker asked you about the number of
About
organized...
non-union, about 65% from...
Non-union, 65%?
Throughout the state, I would say so. I would say densely populated areas in New York, certain specific in New York City, certain specific types of jobs are more apt to be higher. The residential market in New York City has slipped to maybe 30% union versus 70% non-union. It depends. When you take the whole thing as aggregate, I'd say we're doing anywhere between 35 and 40% of unionized activity.
You know, I would have
across
thought
the state.
the unionized numbers would have been much higher.
Yeah,
So I'm really surprised to hear that.
Yeah. We need more help policing the non-union sector, to be honest with you.
I think the other thing that may be helpful, I don't know if every public works job has a PLA attached to it, but a lot of them do have PLAs attached to them.
Right.
And so the question is do PLA have workforce goals for minority and women-owned
Well, right now,
employees?
all the PLAs that are going out have roughly around a 30% number. And I'll give you a perfect example. The Tappan Zee Bridge, which I'm on the Labor Management Committee of, we've reached our goals. I think we've gotten to 27%.
Workforce or business?
Workforce.
Okay.
The minor, and we've gotten on the contractor side, developers of the side actually participate in the business end of it. I think that's up to 13%. But here's the problem that happens. When you have a large job like that, they siphon off all the available minorities in that area, and then other jobs don't have them. We, to be perfectly honest, don't have enough minority and women participation in the building trades. For whatever reason, a lot don't come. The ones that we have turn out great. Some of them have come out to be great businessmen and stuff like that, but I tell you, we're doing a lot of things to try and get them to participate more. And I think a pre-apprenticeship program at a young age, 18 or senior in high school, coming out of high school, all while between their junior and senior year to start participating in the programs, I think that's really a step in the right direction.
Well, I'm almost sure that the remaining percentage of construction workers who work in the building trades that are not necessarily unionized, some of them are minorities and some of them are women. So if, you know, PLAs are attached to all public works projects, seems to me that there would be a good place to start recruiting people from the existing construction trades.
I wish the world was PLA, but I can't have that.
Okay. Lastly, how many people are in the unionized construction trades that did not go through apprenticeships?
What was the last part of that?
How many people are there in organized trade unions that did not go through an apprenticeship program to get there?
I can't answer. You know, you have organizing policies, you have a lot of variables in that. I'd say almost 80%.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, again, you have some trades that really didn't have a apprenticeship program, so to speak. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, the Laborers International, which was one of the biggest, didn't have as the quantity of the apprenticeship program that they just approved now. So when you start looking at them, some trades didn't have many of
So
size.
you got there by who you knew, or
Well,
how well you did on your application
Yeah.
process, as opposed to an apprenticeship program,
Yeah.
pre or post?
yeah, well, a lot of them come with contractors. When you organize a non-union contractor, he may have 5 or 7 workers for him.
Ah.
They sign an agreement and they come in based on the documents they can prove for whatever trade they're coming into. If he says he's a welder, he has to have the paperwork, if he does that. Some credit is given to entry into the union when you organize them for the documents you can prove that you worked at other places. If you came in and you moved back to New York and you were a welder in, say, the shipyards in Louisiana and you came up, you're fairly well trained. But what most of the locals do now, you got to participate more in current journeyman training. You get the full rate, but you go at night and go to schools. Most of the places have journeyman updated training. As the business changes, you still have to train your journeymen that exist.